Do you have trouble talking about your feelings? You're not alone. It's a topic that can make even the most powerful people somewhat squeamish. You're listening to Feelings Matter, where our mission is to demystify everything about emotions so that we can all get more comfortable talking about them. Join Tina and Michelle every week as we unpack a new angle on emotions, drawing upon the science of the brain and the psychology of human nature.
Hello, and welcome to Feelings Matter, brought to you by Mindful Appy. I'm Michelle Stinson-Ross. Tina's not feeling well, otherwise she would have joined us today. But luckily, we do have a special guest. Mr. J. Alexander Greenwood joins us because Alex is an author, a communicator, and one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to Alex today in the greater context of Feelings Matter is the fact that the character that he's created over the series of, how many books is it now? Is it 8 or 7?
It'll be 8 by Halloween. Yeah.
8 by Halloween. His lead character, John Pilate, actually has some mental health issues and also an imaginary friend. Alex, do you want to kind of explain this to us?
It's John Pilate is kind of an everyman. And let me just back up, if I could, Michelle, back up just to the genesis of the first book. And then I promise you I will not go through book by book by book. That's a lot. But the first book, just to clue everybody in, Pilate's Cross was going to be a one-off novel. I worked briefly, almost 3 years at a small Midwestern college, and really tiny, like 1,000 students in Nebraska. And I was public relations and marketing director. And one day, like about a month after I started, I come into my office and there's this big fat manila envelope just stuffed with photographs and testimonies and typewritten stuff, and it looked pretty old, most of it. Well, in the 1950s, early 50s, this school had been the center of one of the first, has a dubious distinction of being one of the first school shootings on campus. And a professor who was denied tenure walked in and he assassinated the dean and the president of the college. And then he went home and he took his own life. It was just all this information. It was like packaged up for me if I wanted to write a book about it. And I thought at first, well, maybe I'd write a nonfiction book about it and talk about it. And then I thought, no, I don't know if I want to do that. But I would love, because I've had all these experiences of being kind of a city guy going to a small town. I'm having all these experiences. So maybe I'm a little bit like this character I created, John Pilate. So anyway, I created, using that information as kind of an inspiration and a backstop, I created this guy who's coming to this small town, which is what I did, and he walks into this mystery thriller situation. Mm-hmm. The quirky part, as you alluded to, Michelle, is that, and the readers just did not know what to do with this, but he keeps hearing this voice in his head, who he calls Simon, who is constantly picking on him, constantly telling him, you're not good enough, you're an idiot, why did you do that, you're going to get everybody killed, you're not going to solve this mystery, what is your do? And he's very caustic and very sharp with John. Mm-hmm. So Simon is in there. And it's interesting in that after that first book, and I went ahead and carried on to a second, and as you know, going to be 8 soon. Simon's still with John in varying ways, but that first book or two, he's vicious. And a lot of people said, okay, is he a ghost? Is he some kind of weird doppelganger? And, I'll spoil this a little bit. No, we start to find out that Simon is actually a manifestation of anxiety. John Pilate has a low-grade depression and serious anxiety issues. And if you read the series, you bit by bit start to learn where that comes from. So it's quirky. It's fun at times because sometimes it's this Abbott and Costello thing between Pilate and this voice, this inner voice. And I'll stop rattling on just one moment, Michelle. I think we all have an inner voice, but the situation with John Pilate and with a lot of people, I think, is that voice is controlling Pilate to a large degree in his actions, or making him doubt himself so much that he could literally get killed. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, I can certainly appreciate, as someone who personally deals with both depression and anxiety issues, that sense of the tape playing in your head, the story that you're telling yourself is something that is negative, that you're constantly like, this can't possibly work, which is really odd because I personally am geared toward being an optimist. So when that nasty voice starts rising, there's really something wrong with me. Yeah. And I really appreciated in reading this. So I've been reading the John Pilate mysteries ever since Alex started putting them out. I was one of the early readers for Pilate's Cross. I have been watching as each subsequent book has come out, and I've really enjoyed following the series and following John's progression as he learns to deal with the issue, how he begins to find strategies and tactics to, make his life more manageable, I guess I could. And I'm assuming that maybe some of that is also part of your personal arc.
I want to make it clear, too, that this representation is not done to make sport of people who have mental issues. This is actually done in a way for me to work out a lot of my own personal demons. I am proud of the fact that, and you'll see this almost right away at the end of the first book and into the series, Pilate gets help. Okay. John Pilate does not suffer, and it's not this romanticized version of mental illness where he's just this tortured Lord Byron or whoever, Shelley, sorry, not Lord Byron, Shelley, this Lord Shelley kind of thing where, just a rending of garments. And I didn't want this character in this series to become some kind of thing that I think, frankly, is way overdone in today's media anyway, kind of a sick exploitation of people with mental illness to try to be dramatically interesting. So back to your question, and we can talk a little more about that if you want, but back to your question. Yeah, I have made no secret of it. I did for a long time, but I have had low-grade depression off and on in my life. I actually had a couple of serious bouts when I was younger. Didn't want to get help, didn't think I needed help, but I absolutely did need help. And through the urging of family and friends, I got some help, got some medications that helped pull me out of it. I could tell you, I'm in my 50s now. This was in my 20s. I've had a therapist. I've had people who monitor me, and I'm actually depression free, basically. In fact, my situation is really more anchored to anxiety. And without going too deep into it, but I've had a diagnosis where anxiety is a major issue with me. And anxiety like that, you hear about people with post-traumatic stress disorder. And a lot of people have the mistaken impression, oh, well, I couldn't have that. I'm not a fireman. I'm not a police officer. I'm not a soldier. Why would I have that? Anybody can have it. If you have been in a situation that runs you through the ringer emotionally, you can develop a form of post-traumatic stress disorder. I want to stipulate, I am not a mental health professional. I'm just someone who's dealt with this most of my life. There's people who have been in bad marriages, male and female, spousal abuse, child abuse. There's things like that. There can be just a situation. I know of somebody who had a very bad, she was hit by a car and developed symptoms of post-traumatic stress about being around cars. It's a normal human response. The issue for me, I think, is just that the body has that fight or flight response, and it kicks in at the wrong times because your body is just, because of the disorder, your body is freaking out. Like you could be in a business meeting and you feel threatened, and then your heart starts beating, you feel sweaty, like you're going to be sick, or you think you're having a heart attack or whatever. And so that's what John Pilate is experiencing a lot. And through the progression of the arc of the series, you go from him at first, he gets help, but the help is typically what you see a lot of the time with this is they threw pills at him. He went to a doctor. He gave him some, I think in the book, some Prozac. It helped. And he thought, I'm cured, I'm good. But as you go forward, you see it's not just medication. Particularly with anxiety issues, you're going to need some treatment. You're going to need some therapy to help you with it. And that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. Support for this podcast comes from Mindful Appy. Your feelings matter, and Mindful Appy can prove it. Try it out for free right now. Grab your phone and text the emoji that best represents how you feel to 972-480-6715. See how your feelings compare with other listeners of the Feelings Matter podcast. Again, text the emoji to 972-480-6715. 480-6715. And now back to the conversation.
I appreciate this because I found John so much more relatable. Like I said, I have some similar issues. I have personally experienced that sense of not only that I'm in fight or flight, but I can't seem to get back out of it. That it just continues to compound day after day after day. And the reason why I'm involved with Mindful Appy and Feelings Matter and all of this is because being aware of it and paying attention to those first early signs that, that I can get myself back out of it. And like I said, bringing this back to this character, yes, he's a fictional character, but he's believable. He's human. He's relatable. And having that character in fiction that I can relate to and understand and go, oh yeah, I've been there, is really fascinating to me because I'm an avid reader. I love reading stuff. And I think the thing that I found the most annoying as I've gotten older, as I've matured in fiction, whether that's television, movies, books, whatever, is kind of the superhero syndrome that these people are a bit too good to be believed. I find I enjoy characters who are real, who are human, who struggle with the same things that I struggle with. I find those characters a lot more engaging. It taps into my empathy. And I think studies have shown that we actually learn how to be empathetic by walking a mile, even if it's a fictitious character, walking a mile in that character's shoes, we learn how to be more empathetic. And I just went completely off on a tangent. Other than just kind of working out your own personal demons, as you say, was there anything else driving you to write John the way that you did? I guess, was there an ulterior motive here anywhere, Alex?
It's so, I don't know why I just know I started working on this story and, I had all the materials that were given to me that I could create this thing. And I just thought, okay, I think it's clearly, looking back, I think clearly I was just trying to understand where I was. The year before I went to this job, I had several big things. I was a candidate for public office. I lost. I was supposed to win, and I lost. I had a cancer scare, had to have surgery to find out if I had cancer. I'd lost one of my best friends in the world unexpectedly. And I'd lost four things. And I'd lost my beloved grandfather all in that past year. And then I lost my job when I got done running for office. I came back to my job and the company was just starting to reorganize. And that's a whole other story. So I spent about 10 months unemployed. I was doing odd jobs, mowing lawns, whatever it took to make some money. I was literally about a week away from being evicted from my apartment. And this is a guy who just a year before was on the front page of the local newspaper saying, they're saying this candidate's going places. And, I probably was blackballed to a degree too, because of politics and things like that. It's where I ran. It was in Oklahoma, and let's just say I was on the wrong team for the majority in Oklahoma. But anyway, so I had everything kind of going against me. And I will tell you, my anxiety was at level, was turned up to 11. I was nervous. I was embarrassed. I was furious at myself for putting myself, as I perceived, in this situation. Basically ruined a good thing in my career to go run for office because and believe it or not, one of the issues when I ran for office was mental health funding. Anyway, and that, by the way, that was something I was scared to death of back then. Though this was 2000, turn of the century. I was terrified somebody was going to find out that I'd had some mental issues. They found out I'd been divorced, and that was a scandal in Oklahoma. But the fact that unfortunately, nobody ever went through my trash and found out, he's taking an antidepressant, because that could have been made into something, right? But so I get there, and I get there to that new job, and I'm anxious as hell. I'm going to a small town where I had very little experience with small towns. Even though I went to a small university, it was still bigger than this town. And when I wrote this story, I just kept hearing my fears. And my fears when I wrote this story, Michelle, here, let's see if you got this one. the fears I have when my inner Simon, my real me, I don't name my inner voice. It's just me. It's just a different form of me. I'm not that far different, but was saying, nobody's going to read this book and nobody's going to buy this book and you're an idiot, all of this stuff. And so I think I just started, yes, imposter syndrome deluxe, right? Started dumping. And my grandfather who had passed away, he was a writer for 50 years. And he told me, you're a good writer. Just go. I just dumped all that in there. Then I'll tell you, when I finished it and got put out, then I was like, oh my God, people are going to read this and think and forgive the word, but this is just, they're going to think I'm crazy or something, or I'm kooky. And actually, no, though, I got a great response from people who said what you just did, basically, which is, at first they did. In the first book or two, they were like, what is this thing? Is it mental or is it a ghost or what? And then when it's kind of laid out for you as you go, you realize, yeah, it's his anxiety talking. And I've had people like yourself say, this meant a lot to me. I have this. And I like that this guy is not, like you said, he's not wearing a cape, he solves mysteries. He's not a detective. He just gets solved in these thriller situations. I like to think of my books as interesting people being thrown in mysterious situations. And I think that's, hopefully I know that was a long answer to your question. I hope that made sense.
It does make sense. And actually it relates to a question that we do have from Mike Tucker.
Hey.
Is there a relationship between that anxiety and the fact that you write suspense? Now, I realize the first plot was kind of handed to you in that package, but you've continued to write suspense. All of your books are kind of in this line. Is that something that you're playing with? Was it intentional? Or?
Yeah, I that's a great point. Well, first of all, I want to say something that's a universal truth that most people won't admit to themselves, and that is that life is boring. Life is boring. It's very rare that any of us. It's and I've had a lot, just like all of you watching, Michelle, just like you, Tina. All of us have had true life horrible situations that were edge of your seat. And think about it; it's not fun. I don't find, I've been nearly, killed a few times for various things in my life. I didn't find it fun or interesting or exhilarating to speak of at all. So I think, though, as a way for me to walk that tightrope of tension between how I deal with my anxiety and how I want to tell a good story, I am gravitating towards suspense, Tina. I think that's a great question. It's just, to me, it's like going to Disney World. I love the Haunted Mansion. My daughter's 12, doesn't think it's that scary anymore, but I psych myself up for the Haunted Mansion. I pretend like, these ghosts are real. I love it. Okay, maybe the Tower of Terror is a better example. I think we all want that. And I think we can find that in our entertainment, and that's beneficial because you can kind of go through those motions internally and have your thrills in entertainment and not have to, do a lot of thrill seeking in real life. Although, I do a few things. I used to do a lot more, but I do things in real life to try to feel things. Like I do races and obstacle course races and half marathons. And I do that because I think you're never more alive than when you're exerting yourself physically and emotionally. And I hope that is kind of what you're going to get when you read my books.
Excellent. She comes back with an interesting comment that suspense is almost like a safe form of anxiety. Honestly, the more you talk, the more I'm thinking. You mentioned that Simon is kind of a character representation of our inner fears, right? Yeah. Reading suspense, watching a scary movie, those are ways for us to maybe engage our fight and flight and know that I'm going to come out of this, that I can kind of face that fear a bit and come out of it on the other side knowing I'm kind of okay. And yeah, I could see how it might be a way to work through some of like our minor levels of fear and and get to a point where we're not just like completely outrageously engaging that fight or flight mechanism, that we can walk up to the edge of it, look over the precipice, and then walk back and know it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I get so much enjoyment out of it, and I've heard from readers though who found a few, and this is really like a huge compliment. I had a reader who read one of the books. I won't say which, but there is a scene. I hate to spoil this because I know everybody listening is going to go buy all these books and read them right away. But in one of the books, Pilate actually disrupts a potential school shooting situation. And I wrote that after Sandy Hook, about a year after Sandy Hook or so, because I was so heartbroken, like everyone, about that. I think I subconsciously wanted to make a different thing happen. Right. But I had a reader get a hold of me and say she read that scene and she started crying. And I asked why. She says, I don't know, just the idea that those kids, and that gun and those things. And I got to be honest with you, I felt complimented, but a little bad, because I thought, gosh, I don't want to make people cry in the sense that they're shook by it in that regard. And hopefully I didn't trigger her anxiety. I think any parent would be triggered by the thought of a school shooting, of course. So I don't know. It's a fine line.
Next time on Feelings Matter.
I would rather not write another word if I had to write something where mentally ill people were mocked or made to be the other, because most people who have mental illness and get help get better and go on to lead those very boring lives I was talking about earlier.